So welcome everyone. My name is Jillian Hayes. I am a professor here at University of California, Irvine. My training is in computer science, but I have joint appointments in pediatrics, the School of Education, and most recently psychology. Thank you, my psychologist friends, for inviting me into your world. And I mention that mostly because I joke a lot that what I do doesn't look like computer science to most computer scientists anymore. And the beauty of this panel, I think, is that we have an amazing set of perspectives from a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different spaces, and if the RSVPs are anything to go by, we have a really cool set of people in the audience who come from a lot of different perspectives as well. So we are going to start the evening with a few prepared remarks from the panelists. They have promised to keep them short. I've got some questions to kind of start the conversation a little, but then we're going to hand it over to you. So we're going to be bringing microphones out throughout the audience. I do ask that you wait till we bring you a microphone. It's a best practice for accessibility reasons, so we try to really make sure that everyone is microphoning when they are asking their questions. And if you wouldn't mind, when we get to that point, I'll remind you, introduce yourself briefly before you jump into the questions. So let me introduce you to our panel. I should say to you, first of all, I am a parent. I have a tween and a teen. Is very busy in my household. Nina is here. My economies are broken. Well, you'll understand that reference later. And I also am a scholar who spent the last 20 years really studying kids and teens. And I'm also a member of a school's foundation board. So I personally come at this perspective from a lot of different ways of thinking about this, and in every single one of those roles, I have questions all the time about this moment we're all living in, and I think all of you do too. So we're going to attempt to give you some of those answers, but also recognize that even with all this expertise, there aren't any clear answers or easy answers to anything. So I've invited these 5 amazing people who spend their entire lives working on children and technology. They are researchers, they are designers, they're builders in some cases, or work at companies at least, of platforms that your kids are on right now. And so that's really cool, and my job today is to hopefully draw out from them not only the places where they agree, but also the places where they disagree with each other a little bit. And we hope today is a sort of fun old time around the fireplace, friends chatting kind of experience for all of you. So directly to my left is Katie Salen-Teckenboss. She is a professor of informatics here at UCI. Don't worry if you don't know what informatics is. We don't know either. She is a graphic designer by training and an amazing critiquer of all things art, play, engagement, and so on. She's the executive director of Connected Camps. She designed the New York City Public School Quest to Learn, and she's the co-author of Rules of Play, the Game Design Bible. Michael Levine is next on our platform here. He is Director of Strategy and Partnerships at the OR Initiative. For our Chapman friends in the audience, that's at your campus. You should learn about it. He's also the founding director of the Joanne Gans Cooney Center and co-author of Tap, Click, Read. Plus, by his own accounting, he is a happily exhausted grandparent of 5 preschoolers. 5?
6 on the way.
Ooh, okay.
I'm not sure I should share that.
Tammy Baumick is trained in marketing, but has been in the tech industry for about 30 years now. I'm sorry, did I just out your age? That was rude.
I'm old.
She is the Vice President of Civility and Partnerships at Roblox. She leads the platform's work in equipping kids, parents, and caregivers to really build a safer, more positive online community and online experience. Michael Preston, our second Michael of the night. I'm sorry, I know I should be more creative with my people we invite here. He is executive director of that same Joanne Jones. Sorry, why do I always say that wrong? Gans Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop. He works on ensuring digital and AI technologies actually serve children's interests and has kids co-design them, which I just think is so cool. And finally, on the end, Mimi Ito. She is a cultural anthropologist, the MacArthur Foundation Chair in Digital Media and Learning here at UC Irvine. She runs the Connected Learning Lab, and she has studied young people in technology both in the US and around the world another 30 years. I'm sorry, I keep outing y'all's age. It's so wrong of me. They look great though, right?
Yeah, good recovery.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm very charming, Michael. Okay, so as I said, each panelist only gets 3 minutes. So audience, you are here to help me keep them honest. Start like, they're academics.
Just don't throw stuff, please.
Yeah, well, don't throw anything. We'll have to pay the Beckman Center a lot if you throw things, I'm sure. I gave them this provocation. So, we heard a lot, especially early in my career, about this notion of digital natives, that these kids that are going to grow up in technology are going to somehow sort of naturally know things better and more and so on. And mostly that's been debunked. We no longer sort of think that kids are just inherently skilled with technology, but we need to actually teach them and engage with them and do that in a way that doesn't overcorrect into like a world of pure panic and so on. So I asked them, when you think about young people thriving, with or without tech, what does that look like and what can we all do collectively to support it? So with that, let me hand it over to Katie.
Okay, thanks, Jillian. I'm also really happy to be here with a lot of old friends, so hopefully we can debate each other because old, I didn't mean old. We go back. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna give a little bit of a bigger picture answer here. So when I think about kids learning and playing and thriving in the age of Gen AI, I think we have to move beyond talk about risk. And we need to start to attend to something that I think is kind of quietly disappearing. So here's an example. So this summer, Elon Musk ran a university camp called AI Play. And at the camp, the kids played tic-tac-toe, and they did it by writing a set of instructions. So they played tic-tac-toe, not as a kid would, but as an AI agent would. And this is happening increasingly. The improvisation, free choice, imagination, creativity is slowly being taken out of kids' day-to-day play as Gen AI moves into kind of all aspects of childhood. And so it's not maybe a surprise that we need to start to worry about play and not just about risk. So with like a single prompt now, AI can generate like a Roblox universe. It can create a Minecraft level. It can finish a story for you. It can create, you give it the barest contours of a character and it will fill it out, okay? That may sound amazing and feel amazing like magic for kids, but what it takes over is the real developmental work that happens when kids are playing, when they're learning. And so we're moving into a world, again, as AI moves into schools, into toys, into online play, into all aspects of childhood. Their ability to remain in the developmental space of free and open creativity is slowly closing down. It's moving into a space of optimization, a space of selecting from a menu of choices. So I have 2 tween kids, twins, and literally they exist in 2 different worlds day to day, moment to moment. In one world, AI is totally optimizing and curating their experience. In the other world, my daughter, for example, is on this crazy group chat with 5 of her girlfriends from school. That is one of the most playful spaces I have ever seen, right? And it's not because AI is not there, but because they control that space, right? They are making the rules, they are making the decisions, they decide who's in, who's out, what memes they're gonna share. But my kids are like literally flipping back and forth between these spaces, and I worry that kind of open space of play is gonna get increasingly closed down. So I'm going to advocate today constantly, like risk is important to talk about. We need to care about kids being exposed to content that's not appropriate for them. We need to care about unwanted social interactions. We need to care about preparing our kids for the age of AI, but we also really need to care about play.
Sadly, and this is a university with world-class knowledge development, very rarely did the public discourse lead with any evidence. We had the beginning of a disconnect that endures to this day. Panic about kids' safety on the one hand, and breathless optimism, I was part of it, I think, for learning transformation on the other. That's the problem. When I think about my 5, soon-to-be 6 grandkids, they're ages 1 to 5, thriving in this tech-saturated moment, I wanted to share with you sort of reflections from 2 of my mentors. First, Joan Ganscuni, who founded Sesame Street on a belief that television, the medium of the day, if designed with equal parts learning, science, child development, great music, and great humor, could reach every child. She studied the highly engaging ads for children's products, like beer commercials, and famously observed, children are always learning. It's a question of what they are learning. And she asked, will the content help a child feel less alone, more curious, or more capable? Will the media or tech help forge more connections or fewer to the people who love them? Another hero of mine, and perhaps of you as well, Fred Rogers added this. The question is not so much how the new technology can help students learn. The question is what they will do with what they learn. Fred said, quote, only real human beings can help them know the difference. That may be in dispute now. Those questions are one we're still trying to find the right answer to, and in the ways that work for all kids, not just some. My second mentor, Yuri Bronfenbrenner, some of you may know who he is, most of you will not. He was perhaps the most important developmental psychologist of the era. He taught me that children don't develop in isolation from environments that surround them. They develop via relationships. You've heard it's the economy, stupid? I say it's relationship stupid. With caregivers, peers, institutions like schools, and with popular culture. Technology is one key part of that technology. It can strengthen those relationships or, unfortunately, it can weaken them. So what does thriving look like today? To me, it's a child who's curious, playful, rather than certain. It's a child who's connected to the world and capable of asking hard questions rather than reaching for the fastest answer. And critically, and we'll talk about this today, a couple of us are early childhood people, and a few of us are adolescent folks, and some of us are adult learning experts. It looks very different at age 4 than it does at 10 or 15. The most dangerous thing I think we can do in the debate about tech, whether it's in schools or in Congress, is treat kids and screens as a single, undifferentiated problem with a single solution. So when I hear the word ban or limit, whether it's a phone ban or a social media ban or a screen time limit, my first questions are simple. For which child, at which age, and within which community? My second question is even more central. Who will bear the cost when we get this wrong? Because we know from 2 decades of studying the impact of tech and media use rates, it isn't the child in the well-resourced area whose parents have 4 extra devices and reliable home broadband who will suffer. The cost falls on the children who are already furthest from opportunity. That's where I worry that the bans and limits may dangerously miss the mark.
Remind me never to follow you again. So, just a little bit of background about myself. I've been at Roblox for 10 years. I am the only industry person sitting on this panel. Yep. But I've been at Roblox for 10 years. My background is marketing. Back in 2019, I had a conversation with a mom of an 8-year-old daughter, and she started to cry. And she said to me, I don't own a computer, I don't know anything about technology, and I'm terrified that I can't protect my daughter into this digital world that she's going into. And I realized that we had an opportunity and a responsibility to close the digital education gap between children and parents. And so I developed something called the Civility Initiative. And it was just about that. It was trying to close that education gap and empower parents and give them the skills and the knowledge to be able to pass down confidently to their children to be able to develop the muscle necessary to thrive in the world that we're living in and that we will be living in. And so I moved away from marketing altogether. Our CEO said, hey, listen, how would you feel about leaving marketing, which I've done for 30 years. I know how important this is to your heart. How about if you focus on the Civility Initiative at Roblox? It's so important to us. And it was like a dream come true. And It was literally my dream job. So for the last 5 years, I've been dedicated to it 100%. How it's developed is listening to young people in teen voice. So again, teen council, listening to parents. We have the only parent council in the industry. We actually have parents from all over the world, different cultural aspects, really understanding the nuances. And then really working on pro-social design. So how do we teach developers and creators, by the way, which everyone can be now with AI, it is democratizing creation. I'll go into that later, but I am much more optimistic with AI because I see the benefits of it every day, from safety to creation to connection. But again, focused on making sure that we have the ability to teach young developers pro-social strategies and knowledge and tools to reduce toxicity when they're creating games. So that's my area of focus at Roblox. I am optimistic, but I would have to say, I fear what keeps me up at night, right? It is the unintended consequences of our actions driven by fear. And I think that when humans are scared, what do? They retract. It's like a turtle, right? And I think that AI is really, well, it's not new. It's been around for decades. But in this day and age, everyone is so scared about it. They're reading headlines that are scary and meant to scare you, quite frankly, because it's provocative. But the unintended consequences of putting your head in a hole and taking devices away from children, we are not going to be able to give them the ability to learn and to grow the vital muscle that is necessary to thrive in the online world.
Hey, Tammy, do you mind if I ask, does everybody here know what Roblox is? Okay. Some people don't.
Yes, okay, I apologize. So Roblox is not a game. So everybody thinks it's a video game. It's not. Roblox is a platform for creation. So think YouTube. That's like the best way to explain it. Everybody knows what YouTube is, right? So YouTube, YouTube does not create any of the videos. It's all created by users. Roblox is the same but in the gaming context. So it is a platform that enables people from all over the world to be able to create games born out of their imaginations and then publish it on our platform for others to play.
Like tens and hundreds of millions of people. Don't be so modest.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm the other Michael on the panel. As mentioned, I lead the Joan Gans Cooney Center, named for Joan. Joan is 96 years old and on our board, and so we still have this wonderful experience of being in her light while we think about these new and emerging technologies today. We're an R&D lab. We do not work necessarily for Sesame Workshop, our parent organization, formerly Children's Television Workshop. We work with the industry outside, trying to help them center children the way we would inside Sesame, which is an interesting challenge. Maybe not surprisingly, lots of folks come to the table for that, though, because when we work with folks inside companies who are startups of 1 or 2 people, or the big name brand companies who make the products in your hands and your pockets, a lot of those people come with a lot of knowledge and experience and really a desire to do something good for kids. And so we're trying to harness that and help them do the work and advocate for it internally to their companies as well. So we try to be, I like to call us last mile translational work. So we're trying to take the evidence base from all the wonderful researchers in the room here and beyond, and make it legible so that designers and developers know how to use it. They also, as Jillian mentioned, we also bring children into the design process because children are experts and have insights that are unique to them. And so some of our work, or as much as possible of our work, includes kids' voices in the things that are made for them. They have to be part of it as well. To respond to the larger question here, I assume some of you are here because of a feeling of unease, that that how we feel and the technology we use and when we are unhappy with the feeling that comes with it or after it, or from the sense of overwhelm or what we fear to be the impact on the young people in our lives, whether we're parents or educators or both. And I was trying to, in preparing for today, reflecting on like what my own take was, and I was thinking about like the history of tech panics, beginning, with like the printing press, when people were worried that the ready availability of print would diminish like human experience or create, rogue knowledge that would be taken up. And then you could follow the same thread through radio and television and video games and the internet and so forth. And so now here we are. With AI, and we're anxious once again. And so there's a path and there's a through line, but also at the same time, AI feels really different. And I kind of want to test that idea on my own too, to say, did the arrival of television feel this way? Certainly it motivated Joan and her colleagues to think differently and do something different. I mean, to center children in the experience was alone a significant innovation. But in this moment, I was thinking about how AI, the way we experience AI is so qualitatively different, that it's very personalized, right? That it's constantly engaging you in a way that other technologies don't, or that it's interactive, and that it's kind of like, based on the data it has about you, it's kind of always kind of making the next best suggestion of what it thinks you need or want to experience, or that it's adaptive in ways that kind of understand something about what's going to keep you hooked, or even intimate, which is a word that I'm hearing increasingly used in discussions of AI, in that it actually knows more about you maybe than you even realize that you're sharing, because it's under the hood, or it's implied, or that it's an emotional valence that maybe it picks up that you're not even aware of. And so this is all happening around you, and it's appearing increasingly in products. And so, but given where we come from at the CUNY Center, we think about a developmental perspective. I appreciate that Katie began her sharing about a developmental perspective, which means two things to me. It's the child development that is held in common. It's different for every kid, but there's a path that we're tuning ourselves to, but also the idea of a developmental perspective, which means that the work we're doing is trying to be supportive of kids wherever they are, knowing that every kid's different and unique and has different interests, different needs. And so that's, if you're an educator or making something for them, that's something you want to attend to. And so when you think about the way AI enters the picture, is it diminishing or eroding the capacities that we want for them? We don't have to, like, this panel's about thriving. There's lots of definitions of thriving. There are frameworks for them. The American Association of Pediatrics, AAP, I got the words right. Academy, right, academics. No, they in February, I think, of this year, they issued digital guidance that's really wonderful. There's a Bronfenbrenner socio-ecological frame to that. The OECD has one, the ICO in the UK has one. The one that we use is called RITEC. It was created by UNICEF through research with kids in 18 countries around the world, about 800 kids consulted, yielding a framework that we use in design. But it is about things that you would expect. Their growing competence. Kids create things that kids have expressed are their own form of well-being, particularly in the digital world. In this context, often digital play around the ages of 8 to 12. Competence, creativity, agency, autonomy, relationships, and of course safety, because you say safety is fundamental. So how can the developmental lens be supportive of that when these other kind of inbound forms of technology can take that away? Does it diminish relationships because you don't really need to engage with your peers or your parents or whomever? Or does it take away your creativity because you're outsourcing the creative act? Or is it cognitive offload? So these are all challenges that we have to take on board here. So I would say this is exciting in my field, because our shared field, because we care and we really are bringing the developmental perspective to this conversation. And I think that is the challenge of our moment for the tech world, is to bring that to the doorstep and make sure that it's well attended to. And if we're successful, that means that these products will be better. and that we have the opportunity maybe to ease some of the anxious generation of parents and caregivers.
I have the great benefit of being able to build on what my brilliant fellow panelists have already said. And, to Jillian, your question about what does it mean to thrive in the digital age, or however you phrased it, I think I'm sure we'll have some productive debate, but I think what was very consistent across what I heard from everybody is the thriving is grounded in what we all know as parents and educators, caring adults know makes children happy and thrive in society, which is the ability to play, to have agency, to create, to be connected socially, to feel a sense of belonging. These are things that we have some great researchers who actually study this, like Candace Odgers and Stephanie Reich, and we actually know what thriving looks like. But suddenly, when technology comes into play, we tend to deflect our attention to the device or the platform rather than the activity, like the uplifting content that is both engaging and uplifting, right? We know what good looks like for kids, and yet we get muddled with technology. So we say things like, oh, my kid is addicted to the phone, or my kid is addicted to Roblox. They're not addicted to their phone. They're addicted to being in touch with their friends. They're addicted to a compelling piece of content that keeps them wanting more. And we really need to, I think what I love hearing from everybody is we're trying to center our understanding on the activity, the social activity, the content, how technology can amplify or detract from these things that we know are good for kids, rather than, okay, so I'm a cultural anthropologist, so I'm just gonna go meta for a little bit, and you'll have to excuse me. So there's like these very compelling narratives, and they're not the only narratives, but they're the ones that make the headlines. One is technology determinism, the idea that technology is like this force that shows up in our lives and like throws us off balance and is an external force that has an impact. So most of the headlines you'll see around technology and kids are like, social media causes depression in teenage girls. Technology, the independent variable, impacts the dependent variable with an outcome. Whereas what's really happening, and this is commonsensical if you think about it, it's how young girls are using technology that's creating those impacts. And these are general purpose technologies that can be used, like Katie said, AI, for really great things, really ambiguous things and bad things. But it's the activity, and we can't rely on this. Like whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, a lot of us, and I do this too, we mobilize technology determinist thinking, which leads us to magical thinking. If you ban the phone, then depression will go away, bullying will go away, kids will start talking to each other, and ban social media, and suddenly all of these problems go away. And it's very beguiling because it's simple, and that's what we've been told day in, day out with the headlines. But it's actually not what we know and live with every day with children and how they're using the technology. And the other narrative is driven by the fear, and I have not been studying this for since the era of the printing press, but I have been studying it for 30 years. Every wave of technology, especially technology that young people are driving, will create this fear reaction and what I call adult saviorism. Like, we have the solution, we're gonna protect kids, it's our job, and it's very well intentioned, right? Of course, we all wanna protect children, but it ignores the fact that children have agency, expertise, and there's a lot of diversity, and that kids wanna be listened to, they have answers, they have solutions, and it creates an intergenerational disconnect, which is exactly the thing we wanna avoid right now, because the connection, the mentorship, the guidance is so much more important than the banning the control. So we have a framework we call connected learning, which is really advocating for an approach to technology and learning that is more about connection than control, about adults being part of the mentorship and guidance and developing solutions together, rather than sort of top-down, adult-centered, one-way solutions.
Okay, I think we can just go all have wine now, right? I mean, that was brilliant. Thank you all so much.
Jillian, can I
yeah.
respond?
Jump
to that?
in.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you. So about 2 years ago, we had this roundtable with the Digital Wellness Lab with Boston Children's Hospital. And we had these tables, and they were filled with all of these brilliant people with lots of letters after their names. The head of child psychiatry from Harvard Medical. I mean, amazing, amazing brains. And we had also these teens in the room, and we were talking about developing play spaces that are healthy, right? And all of these people had all of these ideas, and we were like, oh, yes, we have to do this and this and this. And I looked across, and there was a 17-year-old girl sitting there, and she was like this. And I stopped. I said, wait, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, please, tell us what you're thinking. And she goes, that's not how we use it. And it shut everybody up. And it was like, okay, tell us. But yeah, to your point, I think we have to really involve young people. If we're creating something for young people, they need to be involved. They need to have a voice in it. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just
No, I love it.
Came to mind.
Anyone else want to jump in before I? All right, good job. You're all very well behaved. I want to particularly congratulate all of you on keeping your remarks short. That was exceptional for people with as many degrees and
Disciplined.
sensitive experiences as we have. Okay, so Mimi, you just talked a little bit about headlines. There's a big one that's been happening here in Southern California around what the LA Unified Public Schools just did, which is removing screens from schools. We also got a lot of questions from, I'm assuming people in the audience right here, maybe people who registered and didn't come, also possible, about this. Like, what does a screen-free school look like? You know, are we headed that way? What would that mean for digital literacy? I'm guessing a lot of you have something to say on this. Michael Levine looks like he's about to pop out of his skin, so I'm going to start with him. Go ahead, Michael.
I think that we should canvass the crowd. Who's heard about the screen time limits and the bans of social media in the classroom? And do people know specifically about LAUSD? Yeah. And who thinks it's a good idea? Who thinks it's a good idea?
We have to give them one thing to register. Good idea.
Who thinks that it's hard to say whether it's a good idea or a bad idea? We don't know enough. And who thinks it's an awful idea or a bad idea? Interesting. I mean, I really pay attention to young children, and it's a little bit of an easier, issue for very young children who really do benefit from the adults in their lives, scaffolding and supporting and co-viewing, media, with them. But I think that it's not a simple question of minutes. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics, for many years, how many of you have heard of the 2-hour limit on screens? Okay, and no screens for 0 to 2. I mean, I did some research when I was at Paramount, and 96% of parents with children under the age of 2 were using screens with their babies and toddlers because they've been through COVID. So it's complicated. It's complicated. And they need a shower or to make something to eat. I think the big issue here is it's not the minutes. It's not whether, as far as I'm concerned, the technology companies, have a lot to answer for, and so I'm not against cell phone bans in classrooms or social media, limits. I just don't think it's going to solve anything. I think that we need to think as parents, caregivers, educators, researchers, policymakers, in a more nuanced and sophisticated way. So I wrote a book with a journalist, former New York Times journalist, and a wonderful person who leads New America's work on technology and children, Lisa Guernsey. called Tap, Click, Read, Raising Readers in a World of Screens, and I am concerned about the lower literacy rates. But we came up with a little bit of a nuanced framework that might be helpful to you all in terms of thinking about bans and limits, because all screens are not, created equal. 3 C's. 1, your child. And, the parents here know that they, in fact, know their children better than anyone. So is the screen experience going to be one that is developmentally appropriate? I mean, obviously, it's going to be different for a 3-year-old, from a 10-year-old, from a 15-year-old. But knowing something about your child and actually getting guidance from those who know your child well are very, very effective rules of the road. And trusting your instincts is another one, by the way, and not listening to all the panic and fear around screen time. Number 1 is the child. Number 2 is the context. Where is this screen experience happening? Is it because you need a 20-minute break to cook dinner or to take a shower, and you're going to supervise and come back to that young child, and a daily dose of Miss Rachel or Mr. Rogers or Sesame Street is a lot different than, pardon me, letting your child be on Roblox, when they're 4 years old.
They can't be
Yeah.
forced to.
So what is the context of the experience going to be? And then the third is the content. Like, what high quality content is. It's research-based, it's been kid-tested, it's been designed with what we know about 50 years of child development and learning science research. So those 3 C's are, for me, much more important, as well as the community in which your child is living in and thriving in as they get older. A 4th C, perhaps, are the most important thing rather than the actual amount of time spent on screen.
I saw that. I saw you.
I'm going to jump in. So I agree. So I think, years ago, when I was working in New York City, I helped start a school called Quest to Learn, which was a public school, non-selective public school. And the tagline at the time was called the School for Digital Kids. And what people thought at the time was that this was a school that was going to be an all-screen school. But when you actually went to the school, you saw that there were some screens, but not more than any other school. That the digital kid part was about a way of thinking about the world. It was a way of thinking about the world as made up of a set of systems. It was about digital kids being people that like to connect and collaborate and share and create. And what became very central to the kind of philosophy of that school and kind of how it grew and developed over time was that we stopped talking about like screens and tech, and instead we talked, what is the learning experience? What is the teacher creating with those kids? It was very much a kid-centered school. They had a chance to critique every lesson that their teacher developed for them, make it better.
I think you just gave a heart attack to half the teachers in the class.
Oh, no. The teachers loved it because it became a community of educators working together with children to make the best learning possible. And so when I think about LA isn't the only place that's doing that. They're taking this idea of screen and they're making it the boogeyman. In fact, what they're upset about is the kind of quality of a lot of the learning content and experiences that have come with this laptop. So the screen itself is not the problem, it's the quality of the learning. And sometimes when you bring a bunch of laptops into a school and it has individual programs on it and the programs aren't that good and kids are using the individual programs and they're not talking to each other, that isn't about the screen, it's about the quality of the learning and the design of that learning environment. So I think screens are easily the boogeyman. It's we're gonna solve this by taking the tech out of the school. No, the tech's just not being used in the right way, right? There's lots of ways of thinking about tech. And so I think back to Quest to Learn and all of the misconceptions about what that school was and where tech fit into it and where it didn't fit into it. And the teachers and that community developed a really different and very innovative path forward, I think, in terms of thinking about the role of not even tech, but a way of existing in a world where tech is part of how we exist and connect and make and play together.
Yeah, so Michael, you talked a little bit about good design and what that looks like. Can you tell us how we should be using it?
Yeah, like Katie, I worked in New York City schools once upon a time, and it was interesting to wade into this emergent like laptops for every kid, and the sort of systematization of ed tech. What was once sort of like fit for purpose kind of tools for learning or whatnot being kind of merged with business software that could be scaled rapidly to many users. I mean, we use the word users, right, as kind of it's almost like a pejorative term in society, right, for like drugs and also software. And but this idea that there's a techlash that's come for ed tech shouldn't be surprising to any of us, because really it's reifying the same kind of aspects of the big administrative approach to school districts that are hard to run all by themselves, but then to like, oh, we can make software that will support that. You know, we're here to help. Leads to, I think, a bias toward things that can be measured because of compliance or the pressures to report on each kid's learning and progress and all kinds of other things that may or may not actually be reflective of what this kid is about or what they're actually learning, but more like what can we measure at scale and codify and report. And that has really, to me, shaped over decades like what we have now. And COVID obviously changed a lot too, because technology then went home, if it hadn't already, and we were very reliant on that, and to the detriment of everybody during a stressful time. It's hard to blame the technology for that when it was a lifeline, but also it just became even more digital at that point. So it's complicated. Like any of these stories, it's not one easy answer, but like the product that's getting named the most as like being called out right now is basically an administrator's tool to understand like a snapshot of what's happening across the school. It's not a pedagogical tool. It's not necessarily advancing any learning agenda. So it's just a confluence of well-intentioned or administrative things that have created a kind of a mess. And I think it's sensible to retreat from digital everything. Like the benefits we all get from school are social, creative, collaborative, things that we care about. And so I think giving some room for educators and kids even to shape what that experience was like. I mean, Katie and I got into schools because we were interested in the culture of schools. And so technology became an additive ingredient, and it wasn't the sort of administrative system on wall, which just a friend. So we need to have a more nuanced vocabulary and way of thinking about what we want to measure.
So let's talk about that globally a little. Mimi, I know you spend a lot of time in schools everywhere, and the culture piece comes up in all kinds of spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was wanting to go back to what Michael said about the one-size-fits-all solutions as being really like to tie to some of these conversations about school, but it's in the home context as well. And I think it's like that easy, magical thinking, standardized solutions, measurable, actions. It's very, when you're like in a mode of fear and panic and retreat, like it's very easy to reach for those solutions, but what social media, mobile phones, they're not things that you can just extract. It's like a circulatory system. Like good stuff happens, bad stuff happens. You can get sick, it can get diseased, but it's not something you can just extract, which is why the social media ban in Australia is failing, because you need to be able to connect with one another. So it's that, understanding the context, as Michael said, which is so essential, that I think it's a harder message from like a blanket policy perspective, but it's grounded in what you know about your kids and your context and families. And to get back to Tammy's point about the unintended consequences of fear, I think from a connected learning perspective, what I see is when you have these blanket, unidirectional bans, it erodes trust between grown-ups and kids at exactly the moment when you need connection. So I'll just share one story from my own raising digital kids with my son, which was a good lesson for me in how involving kids in the decision-making and the policy setting can can work. It doesn't always work, but my son was a gamer. He played like complex competitive games like Dota or StarCraft that take a really long time. You're working with a team. So like it's really kind of bad if you start a game and have to leave because your mom's yelling at you that dinner is ready because you're letting down like 5 people have just invested like 2 hours in this game. So there's like real social consequences that, you know, I can't actually follow these games, but I kind of understand what the stakes are. So we would get in yelling matches at dinner because like one of our core values as a family was family dinner. You know, we ate dinner, I made dinner almost every night, and it was something we treasured, and he loves good food, so he treasures it too. But we would get in these yelling matches, like, dinner's ready, come now, and he's like, I can't come, and then the pasta gets cold, and everybody's unhappy. And I did not have a solution except yelling. That was my solution. And then one day, he just started asking, Mom, how much longer till dinner? And then he would pick his game based on my projected delivery time of dinner. And it was such a perfect example of like, the solution was not screen time. It wasn't, like I cook different things. Dinner is sometimes at 7, sometimes at 6:30. Like it wasn't about rigidity or standardization, but it was about connection and conversation that was as much driven, or in this case, more driven by him. And it feels easier to just say gaming stops at 7 or you get 1 hour and that's it. But it doesn't acknowledge the complexity of our lives and the fact that a Dota game, you know, happens when 4 friends, you know, don't have basketball practice because it got canceled because of this and that. And I think that kind of connectivity is what makes for both thriving kids, but also a thriving relationship that's intergenerational.
So our head of digital parenting, Dr. Elizabeth Milovodov, always says, because this always comes up, like the combativeness at dinner. And so how she recommends solving that is creating a contract with your child that your child writes. And really take the lead from your child as to what is acceptable amount of time on Roblox or something else. And for dinner, what time is necessary so that you're not interrupting. It's like if you're on a work call and you're on a conference call and somebody came and said, come eat dinner right now. You're gonna be like, I'm on a conference call. Right? So it's a respect level for your child and your child's autonomy.
You know, I thought that Mimi was going in this direction, and I'm sure you want to ask about is the other problem with these, you know, sort of blanket bans and limits is that it really disadvantages the kids who need to be in school or in other public spaces that don't have access to broadband or don't have the 4 devices. Like I said in my opening comments, that's the thing that worries me the most, the equal opportunity, the equity issue. And honestly, technology has not done a great job of closing performance gaps. Maybe it's done a better job in other ways of, you know, supporting different communities of kids and parents, of course, but let's try to focus on the things that are bigger impact. And one of those we know is that 1 in 5 kids in America, in the richest nation on earth, do not have reliable access to broadband, which is a public utility. What are we doing about that? And you know, others in the audience here know that among the top 10 issues that lead to emotional distress for adolescents and tweens, I mean, social media is not really even on that list. So what are we doing?
Okay, I want to.
Go ahead. Just a quick +1, but that's also the, you know, unintended consequence and risk of removing screens from public schools.
That's
And this
what I'm
is
saying.
mostly public schools that are subject to this policy, not the private schools that have all the tech. And then you're removing all of the opportunities, not just for access, but for support, mentorship, media literacy, all of those things.
Teacher training, yeah.
So I want to pull on that thread a little bit about equity. We got some really nice questions from the audience about disabilities, about neurodivergence. I know this is a space I care about a lot. Katie and Mimi have been working in this space a lot recently. You know, how do we think about age appropriate and disability appropriate and culturally appropriate design? How are you thinking about that really detailed personalization? And oh my gosh, you look so eager again. I'm not going to call on you.
Katie should talk about this.
Let's start.
Tammy's working on this.
We'll
too.
start with Katie, and then we'll hop over to Tammy.
So how are we thinking about it? So I think there's a woman named Meryl Alper, is a wonderful researcher who's worked with kids with autism for a really long time. And one of her recent studies she started talking to families that had multiple kids with autism in the family, and maybe the parents had also had autism or were neurodivergent in some ways. And what they said is all of this advice that people are giving us to get off screens does not work for our family, right? We are a family that love to go deep into interests, and my ability to go online into a fan fiction community and spend a lot of time there and create characters, my child's ability to play Dungeons and Dragons with his friends online and do that, this makes us happy. This helps us learn, this helps us thrive. This advice makes no sense for us, right? And you can scale that to talk about people that may have motor disabilities or cognitive disabilities in the way that technology can, in many cases, supplement their abilities to allow them to do the things that they want to do. So when you remove these devices, just even at the device level, right, from homes, from schools, it really disadvantages folks that benefit from that kind of customization, that kind of support. Again, for them to pursue the things that they're interested in, to amplify their abilities. And so, again, it creates incredible inequity to a group of lots of vulnerable humans that already are not receiving kinds of support that they really need.
So, you know, I do a lot of these panels, like the last 10 years. I get off the stage, and there's always a parent who comes up to me that says, hey, I just want to let you know that my child who is neurodivergent, they have found so much connection. They have what you guys have done for him and our family is really, really amazing. And I you know, it was like, wow, okay, there's something here. Like, there are a lot of people on Roblox that are neurodivergent. Is it more than like the normal population? Like, what's going on here? So we partnered with Internet Matters in the UK. And we had research done. They did research. And they partnered with two of the largest autism charities, one in the US, one in the UK, to get real feedback from neurodivergent families as to how they were using Roblox and other platforms, what they were getting out of it, what were the risks, what were the areas that they were concerned with. And we learned a lot, and we created neurodivergent family resources to help these neurodivergent families guide their kids when it came to gaming. And there were a lot of benefits that they saw. One is communication strengthening, the ability for, again, having that EQ is really tough for neurodivergent individuals. So again, if there were signals that could be created, this is one area where we're using AI. We've just introduced chat rephrasing, which identifies bullying patterns, that identifies risks, and changes or deletes or removes or also identifies bad actors and takes them off so that we can action it. But again, keeping this population as safe as can be. We also we've created a lot of resources from Internet Matters to guide them in terms of how parents talk to their kids about risks in gaming or social media, and explaining to them, because a lot of times they'll do something or they'll say something that will get them banned, but they don't understand why, right? So it's really important for tech companies like Roblox to complete the feedback loop, to explain why, so that a parent can explain to a child who is neurodivergent why they got banned, so that it improves behavior later. So there are a lot of things that we are doing in the whole neurodivergent world that I think is helpful. I think that there's a lot that we don't yet know, but again, we're really, really focused on continuing our research on this area, because I do think that the one thing that shocked me was how the huge percentage of kids who are neurodivergent in the classroom. They said 1 in 5. And that's probably very, very low. It's probably more like 2 out of 5, because, I mean, I was shocked at that. But in any case, we know that we have to do more for this population.
You want to add anything, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that those of us in the connected learning community who have been doing game-based learning and, looking at fandom as sites of engagement, like, it's not surprising. Like, of course, we've always, been a haven for neurodivergent people. And I think one of the great promises of today's technology is the ability to personalize learning, to accept all different ways, different abilities, different interests, to be able to tailor content. Like if your kid it's like, Pokemon, is something I've studied a lot, which like revolutionized kids' culture, because not only could you can customize your interests. It's not just your interest in Pokemon. You can be a water Pokemon master, collect a very particular variety, or be into collecting the plushies or Pokemon Go. Like the ability to pick your own pathway and interests and content and ways of engaging, like that's the promise. And so it makes me sad when these ways of socializing that are online are stigmatized. So a lot of neurodivergent people, and Julian's worked with Kate Ringland, who was here for graduate school, who's done the study of this amazing Minecraft server called Autcraft that's for autistic children and their families. And she's making the argument is that it's okay to prefer to socialize online in some context, or to have socialize around nerdy interests rather than be a football player and want to go camping with your buddies or whatever. That's fine too. We don't need to stigmatize any side of it. Real life, connection, physical athletics, all of those are great. But we're in an era where we have the ability to accept these different ways of socializing and engaging, and yet we still kind of stigmatize, in person is better, or, a particular kind of status or way of connecting is valorized. For boys, people look down on gaming as a site of socialization, even though we know it's the dominant way that young boys stay connected with one another these days. For girls, I don't mean to gender stereotype, but it does kind of shake out this way in the popular discourse. For girls, fandom gets stigmatized. So when we were doing research back in the day of One Direction, there were so many girls, and now with K-pop, we're seeing the same phenomena, are connecting around passionate interest over cute boys. And what's the backstory for all these things? And that was actually the thing that got the most eye rolls from teachers, as something that might be a legitimate object of fiction and writing. And we, instead of embracing the diversity of these interests and the social connection that happens, a lot of times parents feel like this is something that should be limited and controlled, and it isn't a legitimate site of learning. So that's what we've been trying to advocate for. The opportunity that technology affords is to radically open up the space of possibility of what we can accept as things that children can productively engage in.
Can I just make a note that I think this question has led us from the original concept of how neurodiversity shows up in the work to almost 2 cross threads. One is, Mimi, I feel like we're all swimming in your waters here in terms of this idea of the sort of very diverse, creative, social, sort of playful universe of technology that is, I think, left aside in broad conversations about technology is harming our youth, when in fact this is more like what a lot of experience can look like for young people. But then also we're talking about assistive or just in time or just the right level technologies where we're actually meeting specific needs of specific kids through something that might be more on the
Personalized.
personalized, but in a way that's maybe more nuanced than like, oh, what are you interested in? Oh, you like French, but more, or soccer. But this, not French soccer.
French
sorry,
soccer.
guys.
They
But sorry.
0-2.
Off topic.
No World Cup bashing.
Sorry, we were not talking about the World Cup. So, but the point I was making though is that like in some of the work where like kids are, a lot of kids in the United States are multilingual and they're going to schools where they're learning English, but they might be in the 5th grade and interested in 5th grade stuff, but they read at a 2nd or 3rd grade level. So that seems like a really lovely use of of an intervention. So we're talking about technology here. We're talking about phone bans, social media bans, Mimi's Brilliant Universe, and also like tool-based like interventions for learning all in one breath. So I think it's helpful as we get, fixated on tech as a big idea, that it's also lots of things.
And I'm sure people want to talk about what tech should do better, and maybe some of the questions will come up because we're not letting them off the hook either here. Like you might take from us that tech is okay. Big tech, companies that are doing a lot of things to manipulate, adolescent, behaviors. I don't think that any of us believe that they're okay. We're just putting it in context.
Yeah, so let me, I do want to get to the audience questions, so I was going to skip this, but you just opened the door into something that I think is really important. So a lot of you have been involved, and Tammy spends her entire life for her job is to figure out how to get a company to behave better. I want to let Tammy start
Tammy's
with that, of what is possible when you have a Tammy at your company and where are the limits, but also for the rest of you, are there things that you think we need big structural interventions that an individual company or an individual parent and household or an individual school just can't do? Like where do we need a policy play in this? So let's let Tammy, who's the expert on it, start it off, and then anyone else who wants to weigh in.
So I think I'm really lucky. I told you the origin story of my dream job. And so I don't think that there are a lot of other tech companies that have a role like myself. And so I was really lucky that our CEO and founder identified the importance of it. I wouldn't be here, my team wouldn't be here. At the end of the day, in the short term, my team doesn't make any money. We're not revenue generating, right?
You most certainly cost money.
We most certainly cost money. But, we look at it as short-term pain for long-term gain, because I know that what we are doing and how we are contributing will make the platform ultimately safer, more civil, and then that leads to more engagement, more users, et cetera, right? Those business aspects that's so important to Wall Street. I do think that, again, the challenge is we have a really multi-level system, and this, I don't mean to bore you, but I'm going to give you sort of the inside baseball to how we work in terms of when a new feature is conceived within Roblox. It has to go through what's called trust by design. And trust by design is like the Spanish Inquisition for a product manager. So a product manager comes up with an idea for a product feature. They now have to take it through the gauntlet of trust by design, where it's got to go through legal, it's got to go through marketing, it's got to go through civility, it has to go through public affairs, it has to go through all of these different teams who evaluate that feature to make sure that it's not doing harm. And so we bring up a lot of things. It is literally the Spanish Inquisition. The person is sitting there, and we're like hammering them with questions. And then they go back and they tweak the product feature to make sure that it's compliant. We take a look at the global regulatory environment, because there are a lot of laws that are being passed. The EC Safety Commission in Australia is just one that you all may have heard of, they were the ones who started the social media ban, that the rest of the world is now starting to follow that trend. But again, there are other areas of regulation that are happening right now too that we have to be aware of. So again, what we do is, I think, very different than a lot of the other tech companies. So for me, it's not that hard, right? Because we are really trying, and because there are a lot of young people on Roblox, we have to do these things that maybe other companies don't necessarily have to do, because we have younger kids on the platform.
Yeah, I think just like to put Roblox in context, there's very few platforms that are actually trying to serve children online in interactive contexts. Roblox is one of the very few. It's a hard problem, and I think Roblox gets a lot of flack because you're actually leaning into it versus pretending that kids aren't on your platform, which is what most of the platforms are doing. And where the regulation is going is more towards let's rob children of their rights of online participation rather than make the platforms family-friendly spaces. That's where the energy is going. So it absolves they're spinning off YouTube Kids and other things, which most kids don't use. They're still going on to, so I think that's where it's actually, I don't know, you say it's easy, but most tech companies aren't doing it. And there's, I think Roblox and maybe Scratch, which is a nonprofit, are sort of the only two spaces that are actually large-scale spaces where kids are openly kids interacting with other kids on the internet. And so the US has, rather than try to improve the quality content and make it kid-friendly and the privacy protections, has instead moved towards enabling grown-ups to restrict and snoop on kids as their solution, more than let's make the internet a better place for kids. And I think that's just a policy, and the US is, I don't know, Tam, you know the international landscape better, but I think the US privacy, it's different in a lot of different places.
Yeah, I mean, every country is different, right? Germany is all about guns and violence, and I think France is about freedom of expression. Again, France is like going back to FIFA. But yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, we know we have a lot of kids on the platform. And so we just rolled out, I'm sorry if this sounds like a Roblox ad. This is not what it's meant to be. But Roblox just rolled out Roblox Kids. And it's for 5 to 8-year-olds, where we've shut off any communication by default. And so a parent would need to verify if a trusted connection, like themselves, to play with their own child, right? And so there's another account called Roblox Select for 8 to 15. Again, the content as well as the communication is developmentally appropriate for children of that age. And we are doing everything that we can to try to make sure that we are stopping children from talking to adults that they don't know and that they don't have parental approval to talk to, period. And so we were the first ones in January to mandate facial age estimation. We need to know what the age is of every person on the platform so that we can put them in appropriate age buckets so that that experience can be appropriate. And we were the first company to do that, and hopefully we're pushing other companies to take that step as well.
Yeah, I think the AI frontier is much more complicated, and I don't think that we should get into it right now because I think we want to hear from the audience, but it really is, especially for very young children. Some of you may have read about some different products, some toys that were actually trying to form a relationship with very young children. That is, in my opinion, totally inappropriate. So I do think that there are things that we need to be thinking of. It's a lot different than when your 3-year-old has a time check or asks for a piece of music from Alexa. So yeah, maybe we'll get into this a little bit more.
All right, well, with that, let's turn it over to our audience. We have some amazing helpers. I think Raven and Wendy and Nancy might run around with some microphones. I think they're going to steal them from us so we can kind of share up here. Anna Mara, wherever she is, has a present for whoever asks the first question, if that inspires anyone to want to ask a question.
Got one, and then we'll do the second one. Me first? Okay. So you guys talked about maybe the programs that are in the schools that aren't that great. So it's not the screen time or the usage, but the actual programs that they're using are the issues. So as parents, and hi, my name is Eva. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, so we're not where they're so hyper-focused yet on using technology in their school, but we're gonna get there. And I don't have the power to control what programs they're using and if they're great or not. So what are some things in maybe your research or just your personal experiences that you could do in the home to utilize technology, and said programs were given to perhaps give a better experience to our children?
The first technology I would recommend to a parent of a 4 and 6-year-old is to continue to read to your child and to do it in different ways. Occasionally integrate something that they have a passion for, whether it's Pokemon or dinosaurs or something else that they're very interested in that they can encounter in different forms in different medium. And I think, the issue for a 4 and a 6-year-old sort of transitioning to more formal learning is for you to be aware of whether or not the software or the platforms actually are connected to what I would call curiosity and interest-based teaching. And so I think that the technology is not completely neutral, as some people would tell you. I mean, there are things about technology that do tip the balance towards engagement. But I think that you need to really speak with your preschool teachers and with the educators who are in the 1st and 2nd grade about how they're going to deploy technology. Do they feel like they're ready for the AI age? How are they going to be using it? What's district policy? Like, just being an informed, parent, but also trust your instincts about this. You have spent 4 and 6 years with these children. You know what they're most about.
Well, I want to just tell a quick story. Mimi was on the call too. We were on a call with the dean of the School of Ed, and she was with her 5-year-old grandson. And she kept saying, oh my gosh, my grandson has been having this incredible conversation with Siri over the past week. And it was all about, he was trying to figure out, like, what is Siri? Does she have an office? Like, what does she? For sure. It was a she. Well, because the voice was a she.
Well, that's true.
What does she wear? Like, when does she come to work? And Julie Washington is the dean's name, and she was like just cultivating the interest. Let's talk about your questions. Trying to get at like what's his mental model about like how this kind of technology works. Like, he's solving problems, he's curious, he's like testing out the limits. Like, oh, if I ask her this, what's she gonna say? So there's some like very simple technologies that can be so amazing at that age. Just that's about, as you said, curiosity, Googling, right? When my kids were little, they'd have a question about something.
No,
I don't know, let's look it up.
Alexa or Google.
Right, so whether it's you have an encyclopedia, which when I was a kid, or whether you're just like, oh, let's find out more about that, and oh, now we could go find a book about that, right, in the library. And so it's not, I don't think, about like recommending a particular computer program that it might be good at, but it really is about, well, how can I extend their interest? How can I get them practicing their words? How can I get them practicing being social? How can I get them, learning how to learn, right? What are the tools that might enable that? And, there's all different pieces of programs and texts and phones and Siri and, that you can do that.
There might be an issue when your 4-year-old has an interaction with Alexa and, makes you pay money every month for a music account.
No, I'm definitely curious. Like, my kids would ask some wild questions of like, I want to get this game, but my mom won't let me. How can I get this game?
Sorry. So
That's
sorry.
Very,
I'm
very
sorry.
wise child. Yes.
It's absolutely true.
So I would also add, and your 4-year-old's too young to be on Roblox. It's minimum is 5. But we also, so every time I talk to parents and I go, so do you play with your kids on Roblox? Do you play? They go, no, 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 nope, nope, don't know how, nope. And so we created a game that we just announced yesterday called Family Zone. And it's awesome. There's like this little cute little axolotl named Nerba who literally is your friend and teaches you how to play Roblox, teaches you about the parental controls, but most importantly, encourages co-play. So your kid, your 6-year-old, for example, could go in with you, so the two of you are together, and you're in the experience alone, and you go through, and it teaches you how to move, it just teaches you how to play. And what it really does, it really helps you understand why your child loves Roblox so much. And so we are continuing to use the Family Zone we will be adding digital literacy modules into it. So for example, we want to teach parents how to teach their kids how to avoid frauds and scams, not just on Roblox, but on the internet, right? How do you deal with bullying? Bullying online, not on Roblox, but in general online or even in real life. And we're working with experts to develop these game modules to, again, educate and empower, right? Because we have to teach our kids that. They're gonna go out into the real world. They're gonna get bullied on the schoolyard. These things they happen. So we need to, again, develop that muscle memory so that they can thrive.
Another angle I might add, sorry, we're gonna just get fixated on this one question. Well, you could watch World Cup soccer. No, I'm kidding. I would center on your own desires and goals for your kids too. Do you or what they're like, or what they're into? Like if they like to draw and paint, and what can be facilitative of that? Or do they love nature, or do you want them to go explore and figure out what all the plants are in the neighborhood through an app that helps, where you take a picture, it tells you what it is, kinds of things that you could do with them, or something that makes them move or collaborate on something. I think we have narrow visions of these hermetic worlds where something happens and the kid is absorbed fully into that rather than looking up and doing something that's different. I have yet to find the actual citation of this. Michael, maybe you can tell me if this exists, but Joan, I think I read somewhere that Joan herself said that the most interesting thing about Sesame Street wasn't what happened on the show, but what the child and the caregiver did after the show was turned off. And it was designed in a quaint era of co-viewing when the show was made so that kids and adults would watch together. So Stevie Wonder was great for the family member to see, but maybe wasn't as relevant for the kid at the time, even if it was really enjoyable, was because it drew the parent in to experience it together. And it seems a little quaint now in an era of personal technology, but the idea was that the show became the inspiration for some other action you could take in the world or way of being in the world. And so reframing that around your own agency and your kids' digital experience and what you're hoping for them might be helpful.
I want to add a little debate up here because we haven't been arguing at all. So I'm going to push back on the co-play thing for just a second. So I think co-play works really well for little kids. Once your kid gets to be about 7 or 8, they do not want you in the game with them.
Not in public, anyway.
No, I'm
Play
saying
cards with you.
in the game. Because this is their space. They are powerful and knowledgeable in that space. So the best thing you can do, which is building on what Michael was just saying, is have conversation with them about what the heck they're doing. Teach me, tell me about that. What were you doing today? Oh, and open a space so that if a kid does have a problematic interaction, they ask you about it. They want to tell you about it. And you can help kind of problem solve rather than you're in that space surveilling them, limiting all the time what they're doing. It's okay, give them some space, but connect with them so that they can come to you and you can help them work through particular kinds of things. I do work with 8 to 13-year-olds, and they for sure want to be masters of that domain. But when there's a connection with a near-peer mentor, with a caregiver, with a parent, with a sibling, that they can have conversations and celebrate that interest, that's when that really protective space can happen for them. And where real literacy gets built around, oh, what's just happened? Oh, I didn't know. that was that, right?
So just a little bit of pushback on that. The reason why we developed the family zone was exactly for co-play where the child could turn into being the teacher. And so what we are seeing from our teen council, this is what we're hearing from our teen council, and this was like my heart. They all said when their parents play with them, it makes them feel seen. And these are 14 to 17-year-olds. And, we're all, like, they're like, oh, they're teens, like, leave them alone. They don't want us at all. To the contrary, what I have learned through our teen council is that they actually want you to be involved, but like in a cool way, right? Like don't have her. But I would have to say that when I say I agree with you, like you shouldn't like hover over them. But again, when you turn the dial, where the child can then be the teacher, it is really truly a game changer.
I think that's the key.
Okay, Eva
That's the key.
earned her series jacket, and I am going to take moderator's authority and cut all of you off so we get to at least a second audience question before we run out of time. And I would also like to note, if we have another jacket, maybe we can give it to the second question, because Eva actually works for me, so that's awkward. I swear I did not plant that. She did it all on her own. Thank you, Dr. Ritt Olson, for your assistance. I think there was one over here. Yeah.
So my question is about.
What's your name?
My name is Aishwarya. My question is about TV programming and how TV programming is kind of, there's like a void I've noticed in children's TV programming. Like there used to be Sesame Street. There used to be, when I was growing up, we watched a lot of Hannah Montana and Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, Hilary Duff, all of these wonderful programs that taught me so much about what it's like possibly to be a teenager. I don't see similar programming for children or for older children these days. Like TV programming is not on TV anymore because it's on YouTube with like Miss Rachel and then there's horrible shows like Cocomelon, which we know has developmental related issues for children. But then we like Disney, the Disney Channel doesn't have this kind of programming for children anymore. So like shows which draw in the parent also, it doesn't exist. There's one show on Disney Channel now called, it's like a reboot of an old show called Wizards of Waverly Place. And the protagonist of this show, and this is still on Disney, by the way, the protagonist of this show is a middle-aged, I think he's a middle school principal, and he used to be one of the protagonists when the show, first started for kids. But now he's the protagonist of the show. So I'm wondering, what about a middle-aged protagonist is drawing children to a show that was supposed to be about magic and wizards and spells and this kind of stuff, So, yeah, so it's, my question diverts a little bit from like tech and AI and like games and that kind of online platform. But yeah, so what is your thoughts on how parents can be involved with children in watching TV and just, bonding over a show when shows like that don't exist anymore? Even movies, for that matter. I'm from India, and we celebrate Children's Day. Every Children's Day, the only songs that get played are from like 10 years ago. So even movie songs, Bollywood is big on songs in movies, but even movie songs which are from movies for kids are not child-friendly at all with their lyrics, with the dancing, with the visuals. So yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, I don't know, just what can we do? How can we change this? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Michael may have other perspectives.
Actually, before that, I just want to reaffirm that Sesame Street still exists. Season 56 is on the air.
Experimental season
57 and 58 are in development, and we are on PBS, Netflix, and the entire library going back to whenever is on YouTube. Okay. Back to your regularly scheduled programming.
And I think what you said is very sad. And so I spent a dozen years at Sesame and 5 or 6 at Nickelodeon and Paramount. And I hate to tell you this, but it's a business decision that they've decided that this great and important period of child development, ages 6 to 11, cannot be addressed by linear television and video because they believe that every child that age aspiring to be a teen has decided that all that stuff is baby stuff, and they have gone on to Minecraft and, when age permits, Roblox and many other games and immersive environments that are exciting and aspirational for them. And they can't make a franchise out of Hannah Montana anymore. There's not the IP interest in the marketplace for the caps and for the dresses and for the plushies and all these different things. So I spent kind of 5 years at Paramount kind of beginning to understand that everything has to be a billion-dollar franchise. And you see this in movies, and it's not getting better. So I think where you do see that sort of programming blossoming, actually, is in the very crowded, very complicated environment known as YouTube, where you'll find lots of creative folks who have maybe 100,000 views who should have 100 million views, but they haven't had the marketing and all the sorts of things that deliver that sort of programming to your children. So it is about the business, and it is about marketers have decided that 7-year-olds, and there's 4 million 7-year-olds in America today, that they can't make a business out of attracting 5% of them when they really could.
Should we do one more audience question?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lee. I'm a school administrator, and I wanted to go back to the point or somebody maybe about the LA Unified Screen. If you were facing a audience of teachers in the fall who had become fairly reliant on technology and now lost control of the room, I'm curious what your message would be to them around things like play or technology as a tool, or really anything. If you could use a bully pulpit, how would you use it?
Is it the cocktail hour now?
So I can just say from experience, during COVID, where teachers were struggling to online to teach their kids, really innovative teachers, and we learned from them because we didn't do it, they did it. They created their own classrooms on Roblox and had the kids come in, and they had full engagement. Like, the kids were so into it. So done right, this is just an example of how in the classroom, innovation using something like Roblox platform where kids are interested and want to be, it encourages learning.
I think it's a much bigger conversation than we can have right now, clearly, but I think one of the themes that comes up for me a lot is just the decentering of people in these systems, which I kind of alluded to in my opening statement. And I feel like even at the educator level, classrooms are cultural, ecological. They are places where kids go to be together, like many of the other spaces we've talked about, and to empower conversations among the key stakeholders of that classroom to kind of set the norms and have a voice in them. I think kids find a lot of adult-imposed structures to be, boring or, taking away of agency and ideas and imagination, the things that we've been talking about here that matter. And so having those conversations with your own students or at the school level or with families is maybe it's kind of a different approach from saying it's a technology problem, but it's more of like what's going on more broadly in the school that we find not helpful, and then maybe then you bring more people to the table.
Lee, maybe we can talk more about this, afterwards, but could you just tell us, what are your teachers saying? What are their concerns? What are they excited? Are they concerned? Are they desperate? Like, yeah. Yeah. So it's a
issue, right? Like if
different.
one body would be like, oh, let's do this, but it's one person is like, this is creative, they can do all these tools, it's amazing. Someone else is like, don't use an image of me in your sticker you gave me because it's a violation of all those good and that's a little bit the question about
Right.
schools have to take a stance.
Right.
We can't be neutral, so what's kind of the, maybe you guys can answer that, but what's the best one?
I'm curious what Mimi thinks about this anthropologically, because it really is one of those moments where this diversity of opinion is converging with the fact that nobody really knows anything.
I mean, I think that at the scale you're working at, it's very difficult because you have to set some institutional level policy, but the technology itself is malleable. And if you could give the educators the ability to mobilize the technology, start with their learning goals or their developmental goals, and figure out what technologies support that, that's what we always advocate for, both as a parent or as an instructional designer. You don't start with the technology and then figure out how to use it. You start with what you're trying to accomplish and try to figure out what technology will help you accomplish that. But you're in a very, I don't have an answer for you. I just feel your pain because you're being asked to set policy at a school or district level that is, and purchasing happens at exactly the level that you shouldn't be making the decisions about technology. So you're in a bit of a, I'm just saying, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I am so sympathetic to the challenge. I mean, I travel all over the world, and I would have to say it's frustrating here in the US because we lack formalized media literacy training for our teachers, right? Just because you become a teacher doesn't mean that you're somehow like this expert in like digital literacy and health and I don't know, everything, right? And I think that, you know, when I'm out about in different countries and I see the ministries of education formalizing, you know, way ahead of the US, formalizing digital literacy education for their children that starts at the age of 5, I start thinking like, wow, these kids in these countries are gonna be so far ahead. They're so far ahead. And why can't we, in this country, develop curriculum? And this is coming from our teen council again. The one thing that they ask is that, why can't we have formal digital literacy training in our schools? And so I don't have the answer. I wish I did. But I would have to say I'm deeply sympathetic. Sorry, I know that wasn't helpful at all.
All right, we are technically at time, but I feel like there were a lot of hands. Is everybody okay if we do one more? I wasn't watching.
Stay here all night if you need
In
to.
the front.
I'm gonna give you, because you're brave in the front here, so you get it.
Sorry. Just blame Raven, it's not my fault.
So my name is Jamie, and I know a number of people on the panel. I had the pleasure of having Dr. Hayes and Dr. Ito when I was here as a student, and they helped with a number of things towards my degree and being on my committee, so it's good to see you all again. My question is, right now, I am a multiple subject candidate, so I'm about to be a teacher if I pass my next TPA, God willing. And thank you. And so I come from a gaming background. So going back to sort of the co-play, when we were co-playing, when I was co-playing with the kids that I'm helping to co-parent, it started off with me leading them into things that I found interesting. Hey, let's play Little Zelda. And then, it's, so I'm coming from it from a I already come with this digital literacy, with the gaming literacy. And so my question has been around, how do I get risk-averse school districts to embrace and nurture software that is fun and embraces play? I know we've made some inroads with things like Minecraft education, but it is, I come from Capistrano Unified School District, and so we have it, but I don't think it's used as much as it could be. And so that's sort of my question. And, Tammy, if you ever want to do anything with Roblox and Capistrano, and, educators, I've got my resume here in my back.
I will keep that in mind. Thank you.
Capistrano.
Thank you.
Well, I could take this a little bit. I have a lot of experience with this. So I think one strategy we found, so we had this school in New York City, was approved by the school district, but the policy at the very top level blocked any search with the word game in it. So our whole curriculum had lots of different kinds of games, and they would literally block it. It would take us like 16 weeks, right, to get something unblocked that we were supposed to use week 1. So what we found is if we could start in the after-school space and the enrichment time, club time, and we responded to things kids wanted to bring into the classroom. So for us, Minecraft, this was 2009, Minecraft was something the kids wanted to do, and we started it as a club. It was in the after-school space. And what that starts to do is create examples of what's going on. Educators, other educators in the school, you need to have more than one interested in this. We know who, Justin Reich, who's a researcher on the East Coast, did this research to say that innovative schools, it's more than one teacher. You can't just have one person that's doing innovative things. Innovation happens when you have a cohort. So teachers begin to see what's happening. You recruit them, right, to help with the club, help with the after school, and you start to build literacy and stories in the school about the cool stuff that kids are doing and all that they're learning. They're bringing the stories home to their parents. Their parents are like, what? You got my kid to read that 400-page text because they wanted to build this thing. So that's one way we found, is that I always talk about there's in schools hard spaces and soft spaces, things that are rigid and do not move, but if you can find the little soft spaces in between, you can do innovation in those spaces. So club spaces, lunchtime, after school, those became spaces of innovation, at least for us. And then you're able to then move it more formally, into the curriculum. It also helps to have an advocate right at the district level. And so part of it is having, again, great stories and mobilizing the kids to tell their stories. We at Connected Camps, Mimi and I run a nonprofit. We did work in esports a couple years ago. We worked with hundreds of schools over 4 years. And the kids became the storytellers to convince their schools why they needed an esports team, right? But you have to have the stories and you have to have the kids be able to tell those stories, because then you have a foundation to build on. So there's one little thing that kind of worked for us.
It feels like there also needs to be additional evidence. So Katie just described the kind of evidence, the demand, the engagement, the holding power. But, academic outcomes where they exist are also helpful in making the case. And there's a really interesting body of literature on how longer form games, immersive games, actually do benefit kids around literacy and STEM. And you're probably very familiar, you've probably written about some of these things. So you got to assemble both qualitative and quantitative evidence has been my experience.
Yeah, the other thing that was interesting about the whole esports experiment, it's still going, like the North American Scholastic Esports League, but yeah, finding those entry points, existing genres within the school, like clubs, that gives you a foothold. But then they built a career technical education curriculum that recruited the esports kids into, and then the thing about esports that's brilliant, which is so blindingly obvious in retrospect, but we didn't realize back when Katie was starting her school, is that it plugs into a genre, which is athletics, that schools understand. And then it's video games are like athletics, and it suddenly gives an identity to the kids who might not be playing football, but who are playing competitively and are awesome and can be celebrated and have public displays of their expertise that other kids cheer them on. It's a genre that schools understand. Now, when you say, okay, I'm going to use Minecraft to do math, that's hard, but it's sports, competition, celebration, we get that.
Friday Night Lights.
And it just worked as a genre that they could, and you can fund your coach and so those are the hacks, or we had Animet clubs, or Like Harry Potter fandom clubs are another sort of thing that schools understand. And then we talk to kids who are able to leverage, like the teacher who's sponsoring their anime club. It's not exactly a media literacy curriculum, but it's like, oh, I'm going to do my anime music videos for my class where we have to produce something. So that's sort of the connected learning hack. It's like too hard to go right to the heart of the belly of the beast and, you know, change math and reading. But what you can do is tinker at the edges. And even though it seems maybe lower impact, when you talk to the kids, that is the most impactful. That is the one experience they'll remember. The teacher who was also a Spider-Man fan and let him write fan fiction for his literacy class. You know, the esports, you know, the educator who actually has an authentic, you know, gaming experience. And that, the research shows over and over again, when you have a genuine connection to an individual and something that is deeply held, that is going to, like, you know, kids don't remember algebra once they, you know, stop taking math, but they will remember the esports coach.
When in doubt, close with Spider-Man.
All right, I'm gonna let you guys go so that this amazing group of people who all want to ask you questions one-on-one can start lining up. But I want to ask you one word. Maybe you can have two or three if you really need it, but don't give me like a whole sentence. If you had a magic wand, and Michael, Preston, you and I talked about this earlier, so I am going to scoop it down to the digital world that these kids are living in. We can't answer like cure world hunger. But one thing, policy change, norms we can grow, anything, something you want to give kids access to, what would you want kids to have that maybe they don't have today, or they don't have enough of, or they don't have it universally enough? Okay. Mimi, you want to start? We'll come this way.
Okay, supportive and safe space to connect with others who share your interest online.
Roblox. Oh, sorry.
Creative agency.
Places that are not stigmatized where they can connect with friends.
Interest-driven learning.
Places to play where they have power and control.
I love it. So let's all work to make all of their dreams come true. Let's thank our panel for a wonderful, engaging day.